Now, just as a way of an illustration, if you will, how many of you, because I've been at this church for 6 years now, which is crazy. Some of you were even born then. Just kidding. Actually, it's true. Where's the baby? Where's the baby? There's a baby in here. The baby's gone? Oh, she's here. That's right. See, she wasn't even born then, and I was there. Here's the thing. How many of you will you say you know me well? Raise your hand. Okay? So, I'm going to need 5 volunteers that are bold. My wife doesn't count. Okay, if you're bold, keep your hand raised. I'm going to pick you, okay? You're not going to get up here. But listen to the instructions. Please don't mess this up, okay? It's very important. I'm going to have you finish my sentence, okay? It's very simple. But here it is. Hold on. Listen to the instructions. I'm going to point to one person, for example. I'm going to start my phrase. They're going to finish it. We're going to listen. Then I'm going to ask the audience, the crowd, what do you guys think the answer is? And then I will give my answer. Make sense? Yes. Yes, middle school people, you get it? Yes. Okay. Let's start here with Tristan because you were very excited. This one is easy, I think. All right, okay. Finish my sentence, okay? Only you, nobody else. My favorite drink is... Okay, audience, my favorite drink is... Okay. Coffee, water, what? Rockstar water. I never drank one of those in my life. Okay. No. I think somebody said it already. So my favorite drink is Coke Zero. Who said it? There we go. Coke Zero. All right. Okay. So at least I got one. All right. Somebody else. Another bold person. Yes? Brinley? Okay, Brent? Okay. My go-to order to Chick-fil-A is... Hold on.
Spicy chicken.
There's only like 4 options right now. That's wrong. So, audience, what do y'all think?
Chicken sandwich.
Anything chicken sandwich? What? Nuggets? No, I don't like nuggets. All right, here's the answer. Here's the answer. My go-to order at Chick-fil-A is a number 1 with pepper jack cheese. Okay? Number 1. It's just a chicken sandwich with pepper jack cheese.
We said that.
But now they pepper jack cheese. All right. Next person, next ball one. What's right here? Yes? You sure? Okay, this one is easy actually. My favorite NFL team is... No, it's not the Cowboys. Audience? The Patriots. That's right, the Patriots. Okay. All right, last one. Maybe an adult right here, adults. Lisa? Yes? Okay, Miss Lisa. All right. When I have a free day, I like to go to...
The park and the Madison.
She said the park and run. No. Audience? To church. I work at church. Like, I'm always here. So, go on a date. Stay at home. That's close. The gym. So, when I have a free day, I like to go to the gym. Easy. Okay? Huh? And not always. Not always. So my wife says she got some. Okay. Actually, I had some other things here. I said do some woodworking or watch a movie, which you guys didn't get. All right, close. All right, last one. Anybody who wants to be?
Redemption. I go to Redemption.
Yes? Okay. This one, I don't know. This one might be a little hard. My wife knows for sure. But if I could travel anywhere, where would I go? There's 2 places.
Oh, heaven.
Don't worry, I think I know where life would go.
Where? Just say it.
Thailand.
No. Okay? Anybody? Audience? No. Huh? What? Heaven. Wow. Heaven. Huh? Italy or Greece will be the 2 places. Okay? All right. So, here's the difference, right? Some of you think you know me because I've been around for 6 years, right? You've heard me, but some of you actually know me. Why? Like my wife actually, she got all of those right, I'm sure, because she spends a lot of time with me. Of course, she would. But here's the thing. A lot of you did not know the answer, but you still gave an answer. Why? Because you were assuming, right? You're like, I'm going to assume like this is what I think is closest to based on what I know. Chicken nuggets, that's like so off. Anyway. But here's the thing. Today, here's the interesting thing. The more you think you know someone, the easier it is to assume things about them. If you think you know someone, it's like, yeah, of course, I can give you that answer. And so in today's story is 44 verses. You guys are smart. I believe in you. We're going to walk through all of them, and we're going to talk about 7 assumptions that we make about Jesus. Now, for the last few weeks, I've been trying to teach and give you 2 principles. Today you get 7, okay? So you get no complaints. But again, a lot of the times we fill in the blanks, right? We assume what people would do. We would assume what people would say or respond. How would they act? And a lot of the times we're completely wrong. And in the same way, we can do that with God. We can assume things about God that are not true, that are not honest, and we need to respond. So here's my main point. Go ahead and write this down. When we don't know God's character or Jesus' character, we assume his identity. And it's interesting because I already have this teaching schedule when Pastor Ryan preached on Sunday, which is very similar to what I'm going to talk about today. That a lot of the times we would assume who God is. We have assumptions of who Jesus is because maybe we grew up in church, or maybe we've lived in this country who is very Christianized in a lot of ways, and we make assumptions. So let me give you a definition of assumption or assuming is to suppose something is true without proof or evidence. You're just making a judgment, often based on the lack of information. And students, here's what I found out for a lot of people that call themselves Christians, that they have a lot of assumptions about God. They really haven't spent time reading the Word, haven't spent time studying who God is. They just assume. They just heard. They make a judgment based on the lack of information that they may have. So again, today, I'm going to give you 7. Because it's so much, I'm going to kind of run through them quickly, maybe, hopefully. So here's the first one. Assumption number 1, we assume his plan. Now we're in John 11, verses 1 through 44, okay? So let me read that. You can read it from the screen, or if you have your Bibles, you can follow me. John chapter 11, verse 1 says, Now a man was sick, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Martha was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. And it was her brother Lazarus who was sick. So the sisters sent a message to him, Lord, the one you love is sick. When Jesus heard it, he said, the sickness will not end in death, but it is for the glory of God. Boys, listen up. I can hear you. It is for the glory of God. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Verse 6, so when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was at. Then after that, he said to the disciples, let's go to Judea again. Rabbi, the disciples told him, just now the Jews tried to stone you, and you're going there again? Aren't there 12 hours in a day? Jesus answered. If anyone walks during the day, he doesn't stumble, because he sees the light of the world. But if anyone walks during the night, he does stumble, because the light is not in him. Now, I know you may read that, and maybe you didn't catch everything, which is okay. But here's what's happening very quickly. Lazarus, a friend of Jesus, is sick. Then his family sent for Jesus, and there's something very interesting that happens. What happens? You guys were not paying attention. What happens? Lazarus is sick, but then what does Jesus do? He waits, right? The Bible is clear that says, Jesus understood the message. My friend is sick. I'm going to stay 2 more days. Now, again, a lot of the times we will read that as like, why? Why would he do that? But that's the thing. We're assuming that we know God's plan. We're assuming we know Jesus' plan. And he even tells us, he says, this death is not going to end up. Like, it's going to be for God's glory. I have a plan, guys. I know what I'm doing. And here's the truth of life. If you believe in Jesus, God's plan often grows our faith. God is more concerned with our holiness than our comfort. And that is a sad or hard truth to hear for some people. But here's the thing. God doesn't necessarily is looking for you the happiest you can be. I think you can have joy and be happy and find fulfillment with Christ. But more than that, he's finding and looking for you to be holy, for you to be separate, for you to be more like God. And a lot of the times, the way in which he accomplished that, it's not the way that you would accomplish that. Again, A.W. Tozer said, God is more concerned with the state of people's hearts than with the state of your feelings. And this one's huge, guys, because listen, I was in middle school and high school once, and I know there's a lot of feelings. I know there's a lot of things that go through your mind, and I can even imagine how much more now that you guys have access to social media and you can see everything that is happening in the world all the time. Can I imagine? But even above those feelings, God is concerned with your heart. Have you surrendered to Him? A few years ago, we did a D Now, and the theme of the D Now was His ways are higher. And so from Isaiah 55, 8 through 9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, and your ways are not my ways. My ways, this is the Lord's declaration. For as heaven is higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. This is something we need to remember, that God is not like you and I, a person, someone who messes up, someone who forgets, someone who just didn't do it. God is not like us. We're different. And here's the truth. We should not assume that we know God's plan. Because the disciples thought that they knew God's plan. Okay, his friend is sick, we're going to go, but Jesus chooses to stay. So I encourage you to surrender to Jesus' plan. Now again, we can spend a whole hour on this point, but let's move on the assumptions just so we can get through all 7. Here's the second one. We assume His words. Let's read another chunk of the story. Verse 11, Jesus said, He said this, and then He told them, fun, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm on my way to wake him up. Then the disciples said to Him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will get well. Jesus, however, was speaking about his death, but they thought He was speaking about natural sleep. So Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. I'm glad for you that I wasn't there so that you may believe, but let's go to him. Then Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's go too, so that we may die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been dead in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, less than 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. As soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been there, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. My brother will rise again, Jesus told her. Martha said to him, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last days. Again, big chunk. I get it. I understand it. But here's what's happening, right? So Jesus waits a couple of days, and then he tells the disciples, we're going to go because he's asleep. What do the disciples do? They assume they know Jesus' words. So they're like, oh, he's asleep. He'll wake up. He's fine. Jesus is like, no, that's not what I meant. Just because I said something doesn't necessarily mean that I meant that. You have to understand what I'm talking about. They completely miss the point. Jesus was talking about death, and he even clarifies that again, that this is happening so that people would believe. He says, I'm glad that I wasn't there so that people would believe in the power of God. They heard Jesus, but they misunderstood him. Again, so this is important. Because a lot of us will hear Jesus through the Bible, we would read the Bible, we would read his word, and we would misunderstand it. We would apply what we think it says instead of looking at what it actually says. They all assume they know what Jesus was saying. And then this happens again with Thomas. Now he says, I guess we're going to go die. If you guys look back at a few verses, right, he's saying that there's 12 hours in a day. If you walk in the darkness, you will stumble, but if you walk in the light, you won't. What Jesus is basically saying at that point is like, listen, when you are in God's plan, when you're following God, you're safe. You're in the safest place that you can be. And therefore, Thomas didn't understand that because he's like, well, we're going to go and we're going to die. Like, there's people wanting to kill you. Why will we follow your plan? Your plan doesn't make sense. But the truth is that they didn't understand Jesus' words. And the more you know God's character, the more confidence you have in his word. This is what's important, students. Again, if all you get about the Bible is 30 minutes a week from a guy with an accent, you're not going to understand it very well. I can promise you that. If all you get is an hour on Sundays and 30 minutes on Wednesdays, you're not going to understand it. You have to spend time knowing who God is in order to understand. I still remember encountering verses in the Bible. It's like, oh, I don't get that. I don't understand that. And having this shock moment. But now, when I read something that I don't understand, I pause, I read, I pray, I study. I don't let that change my whole perspective of who God is, because the Bible is not just the one verse that I read. The Bible is 66 books that are coming together that God has inspired himself. And therefore, if I don't understand it at that moment, I don't have to freak out, because I know who God is. Therefore, I have confidence in his word. I have confidence that what he's saying, even when I don't understand it, it's good. Now, that takes a humble heart for you to say, I don't want to assume your plan, and I'm not going to assume that I know what you mean with your words. Which leads me to the third one. We assume his actions. Now, we're going to read this again. Verse 21 says, Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been there, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Your brother will rise again. Jesus told her. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Let's jump down a few verses to 28. Having said this, she went back, Martha, and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here and he's calling for you. As soon as Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to Jesus. Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw that Mary got up quickly and went out. They followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to cry there. As soon as Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, and he told him, Lord, if you have been there, my brother wouldn't have died. I want you to notice, both Martha and Mary tell Jesus the same thing. Like, we thought we knew what you were going to do. Like, if you had been here, you would have healed him. Like, we assumed that that's what would have happened. But that's not what Jesus was going to do. I mean, again, he said it earlier that he waited on purpose. Jesus could have gotten there in time. Some scholars said that he actually wouldn't have gotten there in time. But the point is that we don't know God's actions. We don't know everything that God is going to do. And a lot of the times we act towards God in a way that says, God, if you really love me, this wouldn't happen to me.
Oh.
But based on what? You're assuming that you know God's plan. You're assuming you know his words, and you're assuming that you know what he's going to do at every moment in time. Listen, if you understand who God is, that's impossible. How could you understand God's actions? And we try to fit God into our expectations. We put God into our box. I would rather you better adjust your expectation of who God is than try to fit him into a box where you put him in him. If you're saying, God, I can believe you're doing that, based on what? What is your standard? Why do you think that that's not right? A lot of the times, we make judgments about God. Man, if I was God, I would have done that. But guess what? You're not God. He is God. And therefore, listen, students, this is hard. I get it. It takes a lot of humility for you to say, God, I don't know why you're doing this. Earlier, I was at a prayer time. And I love, this lady was talking about how her daughter had surgery about 6 years ago, a brain surgery, and how she struggles with this idea of saying, God, you know, it's tough, it's hard. We're going to talk about this in just a second. But she said, I cannot tell God how to run his world. And that struck me. A lot of us think that we can tell God how to run his world, and we can't. We don't know how. We don't have the capacity to assume his actions. Let's go to the next one. Not only we assume his actions, but we also assume his limit. Here's what it keeps saying, verse 33. When Jesus saw her crying, the Jews who have come with her crying, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Where have you put him? Jesus asked. Lord, they told him, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved them. But some of them said, couldn't he who opened the blind man's eyes also keep this man from dying? Here's what I want to point out. The crowd is saying, look, Jesus loved them, but I guess he hit his limit. He can give a blind man sight, but I guess he couldn't stop this guy from dying. You know what's crazy? That they're assuming that Jesus had a limit. Just say, okay, I guess Jesus was pretty cool to bring healing, but not cool enough to avoid somebody from dying. Crazy, because they got there before the conclusion. They're saying, this is it. But the story's not over, right? And isn't that crazy that a lot of the time we have this mindset, it's like, man, we're done, that's it. It's like, listen, if you're gonna live on this planet, some of you, if you are about my age, maybe about 40 years. If you're about your age, maybe another 60 years or so. What makes you think that God is done with you now? God doesn't have a limit. You may think he has a limit, but he doesn't. When you assume his plan, when you assume his word, when you assume his actions, and when you assume that he has a limit, then you're putting God in a box again. So we should slow down and we should say, God, I don't understand it, and that's okay. I know that you don't have a limit. Again, people are already saying, like, I guess he's done. Now, this is not a principle that I think is worth mentioning because of what it means. Jesus wept, right? Like the Bible is clear. Listen, Jesus knew that he was going to resurrect them. Like literally 2 days ago, he said, this death is going to end up for God's glory. He knows what he's going to do, but yet he still cries. Why do you think that is? Jesus wept because even though Jesus knew what he was about to do, he still felt the pain. So students, I'm not telling you that you just get over it, that just do better. That's not what I'm saying. You can still suffer and know that pain is real and know the struggles are there and know that life is broken. But that doesn't mean that now we blame God or we throw God and say, God, you know what you're doing, I'm going to do my own thing, which unfortunately is what I've seen a lot of people do. They face tough situations in life, tough situations in life. And instead of running towards God, they run away from God. They assume that God cannot bring good out of that. Although the Bible quite literally says that he works everything for good for those who love him and are according to his purpose. He says, you don't know his limit. You don't know his plan. You don't know his word fully. You don't know his actions. Let's not assume that we do. 3 more. I got 2 minutes. It's going to be awesome. We assumed his knowledge. Now, I think this was a funny one in a sense because Jesus is deeply moved, verse 38, and then he came to the tomb. It was a cave and the stone was lying against it. Remove the stone, Jesus said. Martha, the dead man's sister, told him, Lord, there's already a stench, like some of you middle school boys, because he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So here's what's happening. See, Aaron is leaving already. He understands, like, man, the stench is 4 days old. But here's what's happening. Jesus understood, like, listen, Martha's saying, like, it's been 4 days. Like, there's nothing he can do. Again, she's assuming she knows. She's assuming she understands. And listen, like, Jesus wasn't dumb. Jesus knew that it's been 4 days. Jesus knew that at that point, the body begins to decompose. In fact, commentators will say that at this point, the Jews were basically had given up in regards of resurrection, of coming back to life, because it's been so long. Because of the body, the color, the skin will begin to change. Jesus knows this, and yet he's still acting in that. And what I love about this is that even when we don't understand, it doesn't mean that God doesn't. Just because you don't know the answer, it doesn't mean that there's no answer. Students, my wife was working with Papa Ha on statistics just a few minutes ago. It sounds like hell to me. But here's the truth. Listen, just because I don't understand what statistics are, what they look like, what they sound like, how do you even begin to put them together, it doesn't mean that there's no answer. Just because we sometimes look at this world and say, I don't understand how come, doesn't mean that God is not sovereign, that God is not working, that God is not over it. Just because we don't understand and don't have the answer, don't assume that God doesn't either. In fact, I would encourage you to assume the opposite, to assume that God does know what he's doing, that God does have control even when we don't understand it. Number 6, we assume his attention. Here's what keeps happening. Jesus says, remove this stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you hear me. I know that you always hear me. But because of the crowd standing here, I say this so that they may believe you sent me. Here's what's happening. Jesus is saying, I'm going to pray out loud. Not because I don't think God doesn't hear me, because I know that you don't think that he does. Because you think that he's distant. Because you think that he is too far away, or that you're too broken, or that you're too separate. But the truth is that no, God hears you. God knows. He has attention over you. The Bible is clear over and over and over that he knows your heart, that he knows your thoughts, that he knows your life, the good and the bad. God is not distant, students. Don't assume his attention. And last but not least is we assume his power. I know some of these are kind of overlapping, but just for the sake of the sermon. After he said this, he shouted with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, bound hand and foot with linen strips and with his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unwrapped him and let him go." Again, some people that are very smart when it comes to the Bible say that if Jesus would have not said Lazarus, like he would have not called him out by name, that all the dead men walking, like all of them would have come out. And so he had to call by name because he only wanted to raise one at this point. Here's the point. The point is that we assume his power. That we read this, sometimes it was like, cool story, but can God do something like that in my life? Can God bring you back to life? Listen, all of you are alive here. What the Bible tells us is that we're dead in our trespasses, that our spirit is dead, that we are separate from God, and he has the power to resurrect us, to bring us back into relationship with him. That's the kind of power. And now, if you've lived long enough, I know some adults can probably agree, you learn to see God's power. Maybe not a dead man walking out of the grave, but you begin to see God doing things that are not just coincidence, that are not just happen because the stars align, that just happened because I'm lucky. No, because God is powerful, because God is working, because God has a plan. He has words that he's given. He has an action. He has power. He's limitless. We cannot assume that God won't do it, yet we assume that God won't do it. We assume that God is not powerful enough to change us from the inside out. We assume that God, sure, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Cool story. But what about you? Has God shown his power in your life when it comes to resurrecting you from death to life, from a spiritual death to spiritual life? Now, cool story. Again, 44 verses. Hey, that's not too bad. 28 minutes. But here's the climax of this story. Here's the point of the story. The point of the story really wasn't Lazarus coming out of the grave, although it was really cool. The point of the story is here, which I skip if you were observant. John 11:25 says, Jesus said to Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, he will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him, "I believe you're the Messiah, the Son of God who comes into the world." So that's where the real question lies. The real question is not if you've assumed his plan, his actions, his limits, his knowledge, his power, all the 7 things that I said. The real question is, do you believe that Jesus is who he says that he is? That Jesus has power to change and transform your life today? That you don't have to wait until your life is a mess. You can do it now. And even if your life is a mess, he can do it now. He can bring you back to life when you understand Jesus' character, when you know who he is. You don't have to assume who he is because you know him. You've met him. You've encountered him, which is the whole point of this series.